Hi dear, and welcome back to Timeless Wisdom. Let's picture a kitchen that's been at the centre of a family's life for more than 40 years. For Margaret, that kitchen wasn't just a place to cook, it was a living scrapbook of her life. She poured love into every soup she stirred, baked banana bread to chase away chilly mornings, and brought her family together with meals that turned into unforgettable memories. Every item in her kitchen had a story: a well-worn ladle shaped by decades of use, a cutting board marked by countless dinners, and dishes that had seen every celebration from birthdays to holidays, passed down lovingly from her mother. Margaret, like many women of her time, put her faith in the tools she used daily. She never questioned them. But one evening, as she browsed an article her granddaughter sent, something caught her attention. A warning she hadn't expected. Items she'd always trusted in her kitchen might actually be hiding dangers she'd never considered. These weren't just risks to her, but to everyone she cared for. Don't worry, this isn't a story meant to scare anyone. At Timeless Wisdom, we believe knowledge is empowering, not frightening. Even the most experienced among us still have new things to learn. Margaret wasn't being careless. She simply grew up in an era where nobody talked about microplastics, forever chemicals, or food dyes that could affect children's health. Margaret's journey is really the journey of so many women, those who pour their hearts into every meal and who now want to make their homes even safer. There's no need to feel overwhelmed or to think you have to throw everything out at once. Wisdom is not about knowing it all. It's about recognizing when it's time to rethink, to learn, and to make gentle, positive changes. Today, on Timeless Wisdom, we'll uncover 10 hidden hazards that could be tucked away in your kitchen right now, and share simple steps anyone can take to protect the people they love. Let's walk through this together, with open minds, kind hearts, and the quiet confidence that comes from caring enough to make a change. 1. Vintage dishes with hidden lead. Margaret's dishes were more than just dinnerware. They were filled with memories. Her plates had served roast chicken on Sunday evenings, birthday cake for her children, and leftovers during hard times. These dishes had lasted through decades of family meals and felt like a part of her story. But one afternoon, while her daughter was helping her reorganize the cupboards, she asked a simple question. Did you know that older dishes can contain lead? At first, Margaret brushed it off. These? I've had them forever. They're just fine. But curiosity got the better of her, and later that evening she did a little research. What she found surprised her. Dishes made before the late 1970s often used glazes or paints that contained lead. Back then, regulations were not strict. Even popular brands from that time may have used materials that, while considered safe at the time, can pose a risk today, especially when scratched, chipped, or used to serve acidic foods. Lead exposure, over time, can build up in the body. It is especially harmful to children and pregnant women, but long-term exposure may also affect adults, potentially leading to high blood pressure, memory issues, or joint pain. Margaret's favourite plate had a tiny chip near the edge. It was barely noticeable, but suddenly it meant something. It was no longer just a sign of wear. It was a reason to rethink. She didn't want to throw away the dishes that had held so much meaning, so she made a thoughtful decision. She packed away her older plates for display only, keeping the memories but not using them for food. For daily use, she chose newer, lead-free dishware that was safe and easy to clean. She learned that you can honour your past without putting your present at risk, and that protecting your health does not mean giving up what you love. It simply means making wiser choices, one plate at a time. 2. Plastic cutting boards. For years, Margaret believed plastic cutting boards were the cleanest, most practical choice. They were lightweight, easy to rinse, and could be tossed in the dishwasher without worry. She had used the same white board for more than a decade, scratched but still sturdy. It had seen carrots, onions, chicken breasts, and holiday hams. But over time, something began to trouble her. She noticed that deep grooves from her knife were hard to scrub clean. No matter how much she washed it, the marks remained. She also remembered reading somewhere that those scratches could trap bacteria, so she started digging deeper. What Margaret found changed the way she thought about plastic in her kitchen. New research showed that plastic cutting boards, especially when old or heavily scratched, can release tiny particles called microplastics into food. These particles are too small to see, but they can be swallowed during everyday meal prep. Even more concerning, microplastics are now being found in the bloodstreams of humans and even in unborn babies. Scientists are still studying the long-term health effects, but early findings suggest these particles may lead to inflammation, hormone disruption, and other unknown issues. Margaret was shocked. She had always done her best to prepare clean, safe meals. Now she wondered if her trusted cutting board might be doing more harm than good. After doing more research, she discovered that wooden cutting boards, when properly cared for, are actually a safer and more sustainable option. Natural wood has antibacterial properties, and when used and cleaned correctly, it is just as safe, if not safer, than plastic. Margaret replaced her old plastic board with a solid maple one. It felt heavier, sturdier, and somehow more honest. She oiled it once a month to keep it in good shape and washed it gently by hand after each use. It was not just safer, it felt more personal, like something a grandmother would pass down, not throw away. 3. Non-stick pans and forever chemicals. Margaret had a favourite non-stick skillet. It was perfect for eggs, over easy, sunny side up, even delicate omelettes. Nothing stuck. It was her go-to pan, and she used it almost every morning. But over time, the surface began to wear. Little scratches appeared where the spatula had rubbed, a small chip on the side. She ignored them at first. The pan still worked after all. It still slid the eggs right onto the plate. Then one day, a friend mentioned something she had read about non-stick coatings. It was about a group of chemicals called per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, commonly called PFAS. These chemicals are used to make cookware slick and non-stick, but they have also been called forever chemicals because they do not break down in the environment or in the human body. As Margaret read more, she learned that heating these pans, especially when scratched or chipped, can release PFAS into the air and into food. These chemicals have been linked to a range of health issues, including hormone disruption, weakened immune response, and even certain types of cancer. It was overwhelming. She had never imagined that cooking eggs could carry a risk. Still, Margaret did not panic. Instead, she made a plan. She began replacing her non-stick pans with stainless steel and cast iron. The stainless pans were great for searing and sauces. The cast iron, once seasoned, was nearly as non-stick as the one she gave up. It took a little practice, but soon she found herself enjoying the process. The pans felt timeless, solid, safe. For the one or two things she still struggled with, like eggs, she kept a small ceramic-coated pan labelled as PFAS-free and used it gently with a wooden spatula. Margaret learned that sometimes the tools we love most need to be let go, not because we failed, but because we are growing wiser. And that wisdom means cooking with care, not just for taste, but for health, for ourselves and for the ones we love. 4. Rice cookers and air fryers with non-stick interiors. Margaret loved her rice cooker. It was a gift from her son years ago, compact, reliable and perfect for making just enough rice for dinner on busy nights. It even doubled as a soup pot or slow cooker. She called it her little kitchen helper. It was one of the most used appliances in her home. But one evening, while reading about non-stick cookware, she learned something surprising. The inner pot of her rice cooker had the same type of non-stick coating found in frying pans, coatings that may contain PFAS, the so-called forever chemicals. These coatings, when heated, could leach toxins into food or release fumes into the air. She hadn't thought of her rice cooker that way. It was so convenient, so modern. But the more she read, the more she realized that convenient did not always mean safe. The same concern applied to many air fryers on the market. These popular devices, praised for their ability to create crispy food with little oil, often use plastic casings and non-stick coatings inside the cooking baskets. When heated, especially at high temperatures, these materials could break down, potentially releasing harmful fumes. Margaret wasn't ready to give up her rice cooker entirely, so she found a balanced solution. She ordered a stainless steel inner pot as a replacement. It fit perfectly. She also began researching air fryers with stainless steel or glass interiors instead of plastic. She bookmarked a few brands and waited for a good sale. She didn't make the change all at once, but she made it thoughtfully. Because even her favourite gadgets, she realised, were worth rethinking if they meant better health for her and her family. 5. Black nylon cooking utensils. Margaret had a drawer full of cooking utensils, spoons, spatulas, ladles, some wooden, some metal, but many made of black nylon. She had bought them over the years because they were inexpensive, lightweight, and didn't scratch her pans. One day, while reading a health blog recommended by a friend, she came across a study that gave her pause. It mentioned that many black nylon utensils, especially the cheaper ones, had been found to contain flame-retardant chemicals. These chemicals are normally used in things like furniture or electronics. The concern was that, when exposed to heat and cooking oils, they might leach into food. Margaret was unsettled. She had stirred boiling soup and hot tomato sauces with those utensils countless times. Could something so ordinary be causing harm without her knowing? She pulled out her spoon set and examined them. Some were already worn and discoloured at the tips. She remembered reading that high heat, especially when combined with acidic foods like tomatoes or lemon juice, could make chemical leaching more likely. She started small. She replaced her most used spoon with one made of unfinished solid wood. It felt heavier in her hand, but there was something honest about it. She also bought a stainless steel slotted spoon for draining vegetables and pasta. One by one, she began replacing her old utensils as they wore out. She didn't throw everything away immediately, but now, when she reached into the drawer, she felt a quiet confidence, knowing that she was cooking with tools that respected her food and her health. 6. Microwave popcorn bags. Every Friday evening, Margaret had a routine. She would pop a bag of kettle corn in the microwave, pour it into a big bowl, and sit down with her favourite mystery novel. It was her little reward after a long week. The sound of popping kernels, the sweet smell in the air. It was comforting, familiar, and just for her. She never thought to question it. Then, one afternoon, while browsing a recipe website, she saw a headline that made her pause. "What's hiding inside your microwave popcorn?" Out of curiosity, she clicked. What she read surprised her. Most microwave popcorn bags are lined with grease-resistant coatings, many of which contain PFAS, those same forever chemicals found in non-stick pans. During heating, these chemicals could transfer to the popcorn or be released into the air as fumes. Some studies even suggested that inhaling these fumes might be more harmful than ingesting them. Margaret felt a quiet ache in her chest. She had been doing this for years. It wasn't just about popcorn, it was part of her self-care. But now, it no longer felt so comforting. Rather than give up her ritual entirely, Margaret adapted it. She bought a simple stovetop popcorn maker, just a pot with a crank handle. The first time she used it, she added a little coconut oil and a pinch of sugar. The result, crisp, lightly sweet popcorn that tasted just as good, if not better, than the microwave kind. It took a little more effort, but it was worth it. She even began experimenting with flavours: sea salt and rosemary, cinnamon and honey, and a touch of melted butter. It became her new tradition, safer, homemade, and still full of joy. 7. parchment paper with chemical coatings. For as long as she could remember, Margaret used parchment paper whenever she baked cookies or roasted vegetables. It made cleanup easier, kept food from sticking, and saved her from scrubbing pans late at night. She trusted it without question. After all, it came in a roll, looked like paper, and smelled like nothing at all. But one day, while reading the label on her usual brand, she noticed something odd. It said non-stick, but didn't mention what made it that way. Curious, she did some research. What she found startled her. Some parchment papers are coated with silicone, or worse, chemicals from the PFAS family, the same forever chemicals found in non-stick pans. These coatings help resist oil and moisture, but when heated, especially at high oven temperatures, they may leach into food or release fumes. Margaret thought back to all the time she had baked with that paper: muffins, biscuits, roasted squash. It had been her invisible helper in the kitchen, but now it felt more like an unknown guest. She learned that there were safer alternatives. One brand, If You Care, made unbleached, compostable parchment paper without harmful coatings. It cost a bit more, but it gave her peace of mind. She made the switch that same week. The paper looked a little more rustic, light brown instead of bright white, but it worked just the same. She baked a batch of oatmeal cookies and smiled when they slid off the tray, just like always. It reminded her that sometimes the small swaps are the most powerful. One roll of paper might not change the world, but in a wise kitchen, every choice is made with care, and that makes all the difference. 8. Old plastic food containers. Margaret had a cupboard full of mismatched containers. Some were real storage tubs, others were repurposed yogurt or margarine tubs. It was how her mother did it, and how she had always done it. Why waste a good container, right? They worked just fine, or so she thought. One day, while packing up leftovers, she noticed that the plastic was looking cloudy. The lid cracked slightly when she snapped it on. That night, she microwaved soup in one of those containers, and it struck her. Is this still safe? The next morning, she looked into it. What she learned opened her eyes. Older plastic containers, especially ones that have been used for years or exposed to high heat, can break down over time. Some of them, especially if made before 2012, may contain bisphenol A, better known as BPA, or other chemicals that can leach into food when microwaved or washed in hot water. Even newer plastics, while labelled microwave safe, may still release tiny particles when scratched or worn over time. These can accumulate in the body, and research is now exploring their possible effects on hormone levels, metabolism, and even the immune system. Margaret didn't throw everything out that day, but she did begin to sort through her containers. If it was stained, warped, or more than 10 years old, it went in the recycling. She replaced them with glass containers, sturdy, clear, and better for reheating. They stacked neatly in the fridge, and she could see exactly what was inside. Her kitchen started to feel calmer, cleaner. No more mismatched lids or warped bowls, just safe, simple storage fit for leftovers, soups, and the peace of knowing she was doing right by her health. 9. Artificial food colouring. Margaret always loved colour. She decorated cupcakes with pink frosting for her granddaughter's birthday. She made green jello for St. Patrick's Day. She believed food should be fun, bright, festive, and full of life. But she never gave much thought to where those colours came from. Then, one Sunday afternoon, while reading an article about food additives, she stumbled across something unexpected. Many artificial food dyes like Red 40, Yellow 5, and Blue 1 were originally derived from petroleum. Others contained compounds that had been linked to behavioural issues in children and even potential cancer risks in animal studies. Worse, some of these dyes were still found in cereals, snacks, candies, and even pickles. Margaret was stunned. She had spent a lifetime feeding her family with love, but no one had ever told her that the colour in their birthday treats could come with a price. She walked into her pantry and began reading labels. Sure enough, bright cereals and snack packs had a long list of numbered dies. She didn't feel angry, just disappointed that something so common could be so quietly hidden. Instead of giving up the joy of colourful food, Margaret looked for alternatives. She found a brand of organic cereal made with fruit and vegetable juices. She learned to use beet powder for pink icing, turmeric for golden tones, and spirulina for soft blues and greens. Her baking became a bit more creative, but also more meaningful. When she served her lemon cake with naturally pink frosting, her granddaughter asked, "What's in it?" And Margaret smiled as she answered, "Just beets and love." Because colour, she realised, did not have to come from a lab. It could come from nature and from the heart of a grandmother who cared deeply about what went into her family's bodies and their memories. 10. Lead in vintage glassware and plates. Margaret's favourite dishes were part of her family's story. They were Corelle plates, gifted to her and her husband at their wedding back in the late 1970s. White with soft blue flowers, light in the hand but strong enough to survive decades of use. For nearly 40 years, they had been there for every meal: meatloaf Mondays, Saturday pancakes, and Thanksgiving turkey. She had never once questioned their safety. Then, while scrolling through videos one evening, she came across a woman who called herself the lead-free mama. This woman was testing vintage dishes for lead. Margaret felt a chill run down her spine when she heard the results. Many older plates, including popular brands made before the year 2005, were found to contain lead in their glaze or decorations. The lead, sealed under glass at high heat, was once thought to be safe. But if the plate was scratched, chipped or worn, that protective barrier might break down. That meant lead could leach into food, especially hot, acidic foods like spaghetti or soup. Margaret went to her cupboard, took down one of her blue-flowered plates and stared at it. Could this beautiful dish be part of a hidden problem? She did not want to believe it, but the more she read, the more she realised that no matter how cherished, old dishes came from a time when safety standards were very different. The US Food and Drug Administration had not fully banned lead glazes until the late 1970s, and even then testing and labelling were inconsistent for many years. Still, she did not rush to throw her plates away. They were part of her memories, so she chose to treat them with care, reserving them for decorative use and switching to newer, clearly labelled, lead-free plates for daily meals. She also ordered a lead testing kit online to check the rest of her collection. To Margaret, it was not just about letting go. It was about holding on in a healthier way. She kept her history visible, but made her table safe for herself, her children, and the grandkids who came over every Sunday. A legacy of care. Margaret did not change everything overnight. She did not empty her kitchen in one dramatic sweep or spend hundreds of dollars on new tools. She took her time, made small changes, and listened to her instincts. Every drawer she opened became a quiet conversation. Is this still serving me? Is it still safe? Some things stayed, others were let go with gratitude, not guilt. Margaret's journey led her not to anxiety, but to a sense of liberation. Each time she chose with intention, she broke free from old routines and instead let her actions be guided by love. Love for her family, respect for her own well-being, and care for the legacy she hoped to pass on. In today's hurried world, where it's easy to forget what really matters, her story is a gentle nudge from timeless wisdom. You don't need to have every answer. Real wisdom grows from asking thoughtful questions and making choices with kindness. To the women listening now, to the grandmother whose favourite kitchen tool tells 100 stories, to the mother still using pans from her wedding day, to anyone who pours heart into every meal, you are not behind. You are growing, learning and evolving. You're not starting over. You're building on a lifetime of care. You're not losing what matters. You're taking steps to protect it, one thoughtful decision at a time. This isn't about living in fear. It's about finding freedom in being mindful. It's not about striving for perfection, but about moving through life with love and intention. Thank you for sharing this part of your day with us here at Timeless Wisdom. If Margaret's story touched you, please pass it along to someone who might need encouragement, a friend still using that trusty old cutting board, or anyone who could use reassurance that positive change is always possible. Until next time, remember to look after yourself and to treasure the home that quietly supports you and those you love.